До конца года на боевое дежурство будет поставлен и ракетный комплекс средней дальности с гиперзвуковой ракетой «Орешник». В прошлом ноябре впервые было проведено ее боевое применение.
Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that the Oreshnik ballistic missile system will reach combat-ready status within 1 year. This statement was delivered in an official state forum, not an impromptu press conference, not a reaction to a specific attack. That distinction matters. In the tradition of Russian state communication, strategic statements of this nature pass through multiple layers of approval, which means what we are hearing is not a personal opinion. It is a state position. Putin did not raise his voice. He did not use threatening language. He did not name an enemy. And that is precisely where the weight lies. Because this message was not aimed at public emotion. It was aimed at decision makers. Putin chose the phrase combat ready, not will be used, not will be deployed. That language choice is deliberate. Combat ready means the system is considered technically mature, operationally stable, and credible enough to be included in military calculations. Yet Putin avoided any technical specifics. No range, no warhead type, no deployment locations. This creates uncertainty. And in strategy, uncertainty is often more effective than full transparency. At the time the statement was delivered, the battlefield in Ukraine was relatively stable. No major breakthroughs, no collapse of front lines. Ukraine was in a defensive phase. Not by strategic choice, but due to resource limitations. Ammunition supplies were constrained. Troop rotations were increasingly difficult. Political pressure from allies was mounting. Meanwhile, Russia was reinforcing control over held territories, prioritizing logistics, and slowing large-scale offensive operations. This was a consolidation phase, and Putin's statement appeared precisely during this moment.
Расширенной коллегией Министерства обороны обсудим итоги работы за прошедший день.
When Russia feels directly threatened, it tends to react quickly. Here, the opposite occurred. Putin spoke when the situation was relatively under control. This suggests Moscow was not managing a crisis. It was shaping medium-term perception. In other words, Russia felt confident enough to shift focus from today's battlefield to tomorrow's calculations. In Russian doctrine, combat ready is not merely technical readiness. It signifies full integration into the military structure. The system enters command chains, training scenarios, large-scale conflict simulations, and once a system enters simulations, it begins influencing real decisions. Not because it will be used, but because it could be used. This is the essence of Russian deterrence. This statement was not directed at Ukrainian forces. Ukraine does not control strategic escalation. The real audience is the countries that define the limits of the conflict: the United States, NATO, and key European governments. Russia's message is simple. Do not treat this conflict as a localized war without strategic risk. From the outset of the conflict, the West has adopted a gradualist approach. Aid delivered incrementally, often after prolonged debate. This approach aims to avoid escalation. But from Moscow's perspective, it signals indecision. No clear end state, no defined political objective. Putin's statement presses directly on this vulnerability. It forces Western capitals to reassess the long-term cost of sustained involvement. Ukraine sits at the center of this equation, not as the controller, but as the terrain. In such conditions, medium-term threats carry more weight than immediate pressure. Oreshnik does not change what happens today. It changes how decisions are made for the months and years ahead. What changed was not the headlines. What changed were closed-door discussions, military planning, risk assessments, escalation simulations. All of them now include one additional variable. And from Russia's perspective, that is sufficient. Putin was not delivering a speech to generate fear, nor was he announcing a new war. He was sending a signal aimed at those accustomed to reading risk maps. For observers like us, however, the key question is not whether this statement will immediately alter the battlefield, because the answer is, most likely, no. The more relevant question is how such statements change the way decisions are made, how they reshape boundaries that were previously considered safe, and how this conflict is gradually shifting from a battlefield war to a war of calculation. At this point, it is important not to fall into black and white narratives. Not every statement is a threat. Not every calm moment signals weakness. In many cases, calm reflects control. As observers, we should ask together, does escalation truly offer a solution, or does it simply prolong the stalemate? Is the gradual strategy still effective, or merely postponing difficult decisions? And will this conflict be decided by a single decisive strike or by long-term endurance? This video is not intended to advocate for any side, nor does it seek to justify war. It is an effort to understand policy logic, the language of power, and strategic signals that are often hidden behind brief statements. All analysis presented here is informative and interpretive in nature, based on public statements, geopolitical context, and observable policy patterns. It is not a call for violence, not a glorification of conflict, and not a justification of civilian suffering. Its primary purpose is to encourage clearer thinking, because in modern conflict, the most dangerous element is not only weapons, it is miscalculation. If you find this kind of analysis valuable, share your thoughts in the comments, not to argue, but to discuss. And as always, thank you for watching until the end.